I'm so happy to have you on the podcast today. And what a beautiful um, um I want to say invitation slash haphazard haphazard
Serendipity.
opportunity. Like, I
Yes.
don't know how we came across each other, but I'm so happy because this is how I really get in touch with people. We obviously connected when you were working on a beautiful project that you're going to be describing in a bit. But first of all, let me say that I'm so happy to have you here and to have this opportunity to get the chance to exchange with you and to say welcome to the Real Retail Podcast. Christine, who are you? And how did you come up with all of these ideas to do a summit on pop-up stores?
Hello, I am so thrilled to be here. And indeed, it was serendipity that we met exactly. Plus, a little bit of help by the algorithm, most likely, that we stumbled upon each other. So I'm an entrepreneur. I have had and still have different businesses. So I'm really someone who I don't think I can just answer it in like a stereotypical, I do this and this from 9 to 5. I think I'm a human being who loves to see opportunities and then goes for them and tries them and sees what sticks and experiment. And I can't really say still. So it's a little bit difficult to say what I am. It changes all the time. But I
You're
think
an evolving person, let's say.
always, always, very organic, very evolving, always curious. I love research. I love finding creative solutions. And so entrepreneurship is just what I love doing. And that's what I do in my daily life. So to earn my money, basically, I help other businesses, mainly small business, 1 to 5 people, with processes. And I love in specifically helping brick and mortar local businesses to connect their business with the digital world. So digital marketing processes, software, tech. And that's a little bit how I got into where we connected. So in the beginning of this year, 2023, I was really more in an offline kind of mindset. All my other businesses and all my other work has always been completely online. And I
Mm.
started in 2014, 2015, and I am based in Luxembourg, a super, super tiny country. And I knew from the beginning it's too small. I really want to be global. I love digital. I mean, I'm born in 83, so I am one of those generations who was between complete analog and the explosion of the internet, and I loved it. Like ever since I was very young, I loved Messenger, ICQ, all of these things going into IRL, all of these things. I really grew up with it and loved it. So it was clear to me that I would focus on that because it was easy and it was fun. And then came the pandemic, and the whole landscape started to shift. So
Mm.
the online world became a lot more saturated, and I started to go offline again. So I think through that and through the whole awareness, knowing and looking and seeing opportunities, I really became aware of local stores, particularly pop-ups, because I think it's a global phenomenon that everything has become so expensive for small businesses that they can't really rent too many stores. And so, specifically in Luxembourg, we had a lot of empty stores that the town councils then used for pop ups. And I could see so many opportunities that weren't taken. And I thought, this is actually exactly what I love doing. It's the kind of people that I love working with. And I think there's so much knowledge to share. So that's where the idea of the pop up store summit came to happen.
Wow. And when you started thinking about that summit, the idea was to put in focus a format that could be used by smaller retailers or brands, or to help them discover something that they haven't had discovered before.
I think it was both. It changed a lot. And I have to say, I would completely do it differently. So I have done a summit before with a different company. So I had a previous company that was called Sleep Like a Boss in the sleep world, basically. And I had a summit that was called the Women's Sleep Summit. Very simple, and it worked great. And so basically a summit, for those who don't know, it's a conference. You have a certain number of speakers every day. The talks are free for 24 hours, and then you can upgrade to get more access to them. But it's like an online conference. And so this time I went with my regular branding philosophy, which is that you cannot speak to everyone or you will speak to nobody. And so you should niche down as much as you can. So for me, it was clear I wanted to focus on local businesses. So not online coaches or sales coaches. I really want, which I used to work with a lot previously, health coaches, all of those things. I really wanted to talk to the people who opened their passion stores, but who weren't necessarily that fluid in marketing. But then I thought, okay, you need to niche it further down. So I was like, I love pop-up stores because you have that specific challenge of a reduced time. So you have to make it count. And I have a lot to contribute to that. And then I was like, let's focus it even more. Let's focus it not only women, let's focus it even more on sustainable fashion. So technically, if you go according to the brand, school of thought, that's how you should be doing it. However, I did it according to a structure that is from a company called Summit in a Box. It's with Krista Miller. It's brilliant. They furnish you with a timeline, with an Asana board, with lots of tools. So it was a lot easier. But I did give them that as a feedback too. The chronological order was wrong, because once we had established that, the next task was to create just a rough draft of your site, so that when you reach out to speakers, they can have a look and see what it will more or less look like. So it doesn't have to be done. But obviously, you already invest time in copywriting, in the brand of the summit, and messaging. And then we started to do research for speakers, and I realized it was much more difficult than I thought.
Reaching out,
finding speakers.
Yes.
Because if the previous summit, I had a gazillion people who worked in the health sector online. So I was able to work with people who worked on the thyroid because it affected sleep, or gut health because it affected sleep, hormones because it affected sleep, lots of different connections. But for this, finding people online who had an online presence so that you could find them to talk about retail was a lot more difficult. There are a lot fewer people than I had imagined. And very quickly, I realized I had niched down way too much. That actually, there wasn't really a space for retail in general in the online space the way we are used to it in other niches. So we kind of course corrected a little bit through our messaging by making it clear that it's not just for pop-up stores, but it's also for market vendors, for any local brick and mortar stores. But obviously the URL, the name, the successful pop-up store was already done. In hindsight, now knowing this, I would make it more global, because we are not quite there yet. And it's a great playground to play with, I have to say.
Yeah.
So there's a need.
You've highlighted two interesting things throughout this brief introduction. First of all, going through pop-up stores and being very niche towards one specific kind of business showed you that there is a difficulty. This means that despite the fact that pop-up stores have been there for the past 20 years or so, there are still many businesses that haven't had the chance to either understand the nature of pop-ups or adopt them. So this is our first line of thought. And then we also understand that there are lots of people who might have had a chance to work with pop-up stores, but did not integrate it into their business models. Therefore, somehow along the way, they lost that momentum related to the pop-up store adoption. So it's interesting now to see that once this summit has been up and running and online, who were the speakers who finally took part of this event?
Yeah. So for us, the challenge was to just looking at pop-up store experts was very difficult to find. I found a few on YouTube. YouTube was actually my most successful playground because you had people sharing their experiences having a pop-up. Or something that I discovered as well linguistically is that people consider markets pop-ups as well, which to me, the pop-up was a physical store for a certain amount of time, but in the same location, So there I was already, okay, linguistics, the definition is different depending on who you talk to. And then I had to broaden it out. And so I was looking for retail experts. So people who were either very specifically not just online marketing or branding, but very specifically talking about how to make a store stand out, like a physical store, how to make it stand out, how to interact with people in person, how to sell, how to communicate, how to find foot traffic, which again is very different from online marketing. And then, so the first, really, that was the logistics one. The second one was more marketing offline. And then the third leg that was really giving it the bridge towards digital was people who worked with local stores and how to leverage the digital world, which is what I specialize in too. So it was a really great mix of speakers. Some of them knew each other because there aren't that many, right? So they knew each other and had heard of each other, but a lot of them were very new to the mix. And then we had some influencers as well who were talking about what to do if you want to work with an influencer, what to do, what not to, trends in this. But it was not like finding a pop-up store expert was actually quite difficult. I think it was near impossible. And I found you, I remember, through LinkedIn and through Instagram at exactly the same time. It must have been within the span of 2 days. And so I think I checked you out, and then you actually got in touch with me. I was like, oh,
Nice. Thank you for that. So it's interesting to see that the circle, as you said, of pop-up experts or people who have really understood the meaning of pop-up stores and understood how they should apply it is very niche. And now we come across these people trying to maybe share their opinion and their know-how to potential businesses or retailers or small businesses, who is in that case your audience. I was intrigued to know and to learn about the audience who registered to that summit. Who were these people, what profiles, and what they expected from that summit?
Yeah. So a lot of them, so we had 16 speakers in total. And it was very interesting to see how they converted. What I mean by that is they obviously promoted the summit to their crowd, and I could see how many people actually signed up. So I could see this person converts at that many percent, this person converts at this much percent. So their crowd saw through their affiliate links, I could see that. And I had 3 people in particular who converted very, very well. And it wasn't the ones with 70,000 followers. It was really the ones who had between 2,000 and 4,000 followers who were working very specifically in retail. So one is really retail mavens. They really help local brick and mortar stores with their marketing. And the other one is very similar, more with branding, but for brick and mortar as well. So it was very clear that the people who were most interested were those who were in a physical store and who had already done some research on how to get help in the online space, and who were partially already working or following those experts who had decided to share their knowledge online through social media mainly. And looking at who, we broadened it a little bit because I realized that people were interested and then thought it wasn't to them, like artists, for example, people who went to exhibits and markets. And so we adapted the messaging a couple of times because I wanted to make sure that people understood what we are discussing applies whether you have a brick and mortar, whether you go at markets, whether you have art exhibits. You can apply this knowledge to so many things. And in the end, that's really also who attended. It was a beautiful mix of artists, of people who just did weekend market stalls, a lot of market vendors actually. And then you had the brick and mortars. But the market ones were actually some of the most engaged and those who registered the most. People who have either full-time or part-time gig who sell at markets and exhibits.
Right. Interesting. I will not be commenting on that because now that you're talking about this particular retailer format or profile, I'm having all of these ideas on why. I mean, like, this is a new research topic. This is for another day.
Yes.
But very interesting, Christine. Thank you for that. But certainly, talking to 16 experts
Mm,
in topics closely related to pop up stores or very much related to pop up stores would help us understand or gain more clarity about that topic, which is very controversial because the more we grow into that pop up journey, it seems that the less we know, or maybe the term had been vulgarized, washed away,
yeah.
or pretty much put in a gray zone.
Yeah.
This has taken a lot of my time into aiming at creating or putting forward, if you want, a definition on what is a
Yeah.
pop-up store. But I
Yeah.
want to ask you, after 16 interviews and many exchanges with people and all of the Q&A that occurred, in your opinion, what are pop-up stores and why should brands adopt pop-up stores?
So for me, the definition, I think some people embellish it or interpret it differently, but to me, it's still, and also to the retail experts, like those who really earn their living and are experts in retail, a pop-up store is still a local facility where a brand exhibits their wares for a fixed amount of time, and that can be a couple of weeks or a couple of months in general. So usually we talk a maximum of 6 months, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, and the purpose is really brand exposure. So it's really either there's different goals obviously behind every pop-up store for every brand, but in general, it's for people to see you, to meet you, and then to recognize you later on. I think the more established you are, it's probably more about product testing, watching and observing and seeing trends, potential trends, etc., etc. But in general, it's really about brand exposure. And I think it's really interesting because there seem to be two worlds of pop-ups. There seems to be the huge established brands who use pop-ups very differently to small businesses who might not be able to afford a complete like offline shop and who use it for to then sell afterwards and just get known and get a foot in the door. So I think there's two different reasons why you would do a pop-up. But I think it is something that we've discussed and that really goes close to my heart and that is, I think is true, is that you can never, e-commerce can never, never, never replace in-person transactions. And we still purchase 80% of our things offline, not online. The human is still wired a lot of the time to go to a local store first. And it depends obviously also what you buy, but it's still a lot of transactions happening. It's a very different concept and process of what you do. So I think for it doesn't really matter if you are established or not established, pop-ups is something that can only add to your bottom line if you have a clear agenda on how to do it, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for that. But this balance between established or establishing brands and when is really important. And we know that most of the luxury brands or
Mhm.
really established brands, mass brands who adopt pop-up stores do it well. Like it's so big, it's so theatrical, it's so immersive, and the experience is beautiful. And then when we move across the spectrum and go further down to smaller brands, we see that there is an incapacity
Yeah.
of creating that physical experience, even though we're promoting more and more and even more today the importance of that physical experience, that human connection, that customer centricity within a
Mhm.
physical context. But how can we do that if we have no money or we have no investments? And the discrepancy between needing to pop up like several times and to pop up well, but not being able to put on a money because I need money
Yeah.
actually to create that pop up. So I
Yeah.
believe that most of the questions were around that area. Have there been any solutions for those smaller retailers wishing to pop up?
Yeah. I really think there was particularly our speaker, Melissa Robbins. I loved her presentations, and she is her company is called The Lot Co. She's in Australia, and throughout her presentation, she gives loads of examples of that creativity. So I think the first thing is that I think there's if you are an institution that is distributing or curating spaces for pop-ups, I think personally it would be a great step to include some education as well, and to use the big brands as examples. Obviously, the budget is not going to be the same. You're not going to have the same completely nuts kind of experiences, but creativity makes up for a lot of it. And so that's why I loved Melissa's workshop, because she used a lot of super low budget examples.
Mm.
But caveat, I was telling her, how do you get these ideas? And she was very candid and said, I am a very creative person. I
Mm.
love playing around with materials. I love putting things together. I love crafting arts. So I think if you are someone who is not the most creative person, your biggest asset would be a friend who is artistically inclined, who you could just say, do you have creative solutions to how I can bring this space onto life? These are my ideas. How do you translate that? How do you produce it on a budget? Because I think there is endless possibilities of doing
Right.
this on a low budget. And it's not about replicating the high-end brands. It's a different world. You are not, a huge Gucci Hermes brand yet. So but it's not about the budget. It's about the effect of people coming in, and you don't need a high budget production in order to surprise people or to stay in
Right.
their minds, right? So I think that is something that I really appreciated, but I just wish the pre-education step was just normal in these, public sort of initiatives to stimulate commerce and to use pop-up stores for smaller businesses, because I feel that a lot of them are missing out on so much just because they don't know. They don't know any
Yeah.
different. For them, it's
Yeah.
just, I'm getting some stock in and I present it and I sit down and I wait till someone comes in. And it's just like, there's so much more potential. So I wish that it would be a staple for every commune, every city that works with pop-up stores, that they had some educational aspect to this.
Right. It's really important. And we
Mm.
try to be militants to to share that knowledge. But it's not always very easy because, the other hand, the people who are responsible for putting such projects forward, unfortunately, don't understand still the value of these types of initiatives. Let's say.
Yeah.
And here comes the idea related to communicating your pop-up store, and to be hopefully able to create a certain kind of buzz around it. It all comes down also to the notion of being acquainted with what
Mhm.
is communications, and that it goes beyond a simple post on Facebook,
Yes.
Instagram, or okay, I know what went inside your head right now.
Yes.
How important is communications in the case of pop-up stores as well?
It's huge. I mean, I just feel people's heartbreak when they put all their effort into the selection of their inventory and making it pretty and having a little vase with a flower, obviously, and all these things. And then they just sit there and nothing happens. And the thing is, it's because we see ourselves too small in a lot of cases. Why would we be worth an article in the newspaper or in a magazine? Why would we be worth being on the radio or TV even talking about it? And the truth is, it's very easy. Like, PR communications is actually not that difficult, specifically on a local level, which pop-up stores are. In general, I find that the attitude is very much into supporting small businesses.
Mm.
And so when you go and you start with a press release, as intimidating as it is, it's not difficult anymore. You can use AI to do the draft for you, and you just, tweak it until it's yours. That would be the first step. Leveraging your network is your second step. And then I think it takes a lot longer than people think. It's not just a week before. And I noticed it once again with Instagram. We had a heavy promotion, but we really scheduled it out like 3 weeks, 4 weeks in advance, because people see your post days and days afterwards. So even if we posted up to 2 to 3 times a day, I was just like shameless with it. I loved it, but I could see the reactions. It takes a lot longer than you think it does. And even if you think this is an old hat, people will just discover it. So I think people underestimate how quickly it works. And so I think you have to really do behind the scenes way in advance so that people already know, and you have to tell it a lot more than you think you do. And I think that's the mindset. I will annoy people. Oh, they've seen it 5,000 times already. I promise you they don't. And those who follow you closely, they enjoy seeing you interact that way. So
Yes.
I think that's something, it's just an internal mindset thing that you need to switch, because you have that limited time. You need to go for it. You need to give it your all. You'll be exhausted afterwards, but it will be worth it.
Of course, because actually, when you're working with pop-up stores, the dynamic changes. You have the same rules that you apply for your physical store, but on a shorter format,
Yeah,
on and a recurrent agenda, and you have to keep pouring that creativity,
yeah,
as we said, to keep the dynamic ongoing, and so that people would find you unboring, actually.
exactly.
So, like, we identified three important elements: the retail format, physical or mobile, creativity, and creating a nice physical environment with the means that we have, of
Yeah.
course, and then the importance of communications. And you've talked obviously about the product, because mostly
Mhm.
smaller retailers are pretty much product focused. So, are there, in your opinion, also some rules of selecting products for your pop-up store, or should we just put everything that we have in in our pop-up event or pop-up store?
It was really interesting talking inventory, because to me that was like, how on earth are you going to do it the most efficient way? And I think there will always be an element of surprise to it. And
Yeah.
I just had a conversation yesterday with one of my clients, and she, for example, there was one particular color of the collection that didn't sell last year at all. And this year she just put it out, took it out of the box, and it sold out at the first event that she did. So I think there is no absolute 100% certain formula. But one thing that I really learned during the pop-up is that don't just stick to one kind of product. You need to tell stories with your products. And what I mean by that is that it needs to be, if you sell clothes, it cannot just be dresses or
Mm,
coats. It has
mm,
to be accessories too.
mm, mm.
If you sell art, mix it up with other people's as well. So maybe you paint, but why not have coasters that suit the mood? Like, really tell stories of people going broader than just one item. Really help them to visualize themselves in different accessories, to tell a story with their outfit. It's the first thing we see, we judge it immediately. It should all hang together. And it's one of the ways that I like to do my shopping too. I'm overwhelmed immediately if I see too many things. So I love going into the dressing room, and I have my friend who has the store. She brings me stuff, and I
Yeah.
have my outfits. And the truth is, I wear those outfits in exactly the same combination that I bought them. I
Okay.
don't mix them up very much. I like the comfort of knowing this goes with this and this.
Right. Right.
So I think that is something that opened my eyes in terms of use the accessories, use smaller pieces with a bigger margin or profit margin to add to the thing. Like, the add-ons are really, if not even more important than the main things in your collection. And I
Mm.
think sometimes that's an ego thing as a store owner. It's like, it's me, it's about my things. Yes, it is. But you need to be smart. You need to make it count. You don't want to make a loss. You want to make a profit, and you want to be of service to your clients. And that is to make them happy, feel complete. So
Right.
and communicating that again is a different story. But I think that is the main thing that I thought about inventory, is to make sure that your profit margins are actually realistic, and that you have a mix of items with different profit margins, so that you can make sure that in the end the bottom line is a profit at all.
Right. And at the end of the day, also coming back to that idea of educating our retailers into telling them that the collection is there. We know that it will always be there, either online or in your physical shop. But when you're popping up, you have to have a reason to pop up and tell a story on why you're popping up. And
Mhm.
this also highlighted a new variable related to pop-up stores, which is the importance of collaborations, like working together towards meeting an objective. So I know that you gave that idea related to maybe complementing or completing a certain offering, but this also draws back to collaboration slash communications. How important is working together in pop-up stores to increase that footfall or notoriety or frequency related to the brand, in your
Yeah,
opinion?
absolutely. I think it's like through just hijacking each other's audiences
Yes,
already, super
yes.
helpful. And then the other thing, hang on, that's some train of thought. So it's first of all, you can hijack each other's audiences, but the other thing that about collaboration, I completely lost my train of thought. I don't
It
remember
will
what
come
I was
back.
going to say.
Learning from each other experiences, for instance.
Oh yeah, and the other thing is creating as many events as you can during your
Mhm.
time. So collaborators doesn't just need to be inventory. So it could be artists, it could
Mhm.
be musicians, it could be something related to taste, like a workshop, a cooking workshop. It could
Right.
be so many different things. So I think that's where the story element goes into a more dimensional sort of things. And the big brands do that very, very well. They do concerts, they do fashion shows, they do workshops. You can do the same thing on a smaller scale. And it's really about cross-pollination of your audiences. And I think that is also what keeps you interesting and what gives you content to share for people to realize and give them a reason to actually visit your pop-up store. So I love having exhibits in your pop-up stores, like asking certain artists to come and have a short exhibit of their artwork, music, of course. Anything like that, I think is just giving you an interesting edge to it, plus widening your net in terms of exposure. And so I think it's you really should have something on the books at least once a week when you have a pop-up store.
Right. Very interesting. Thank you for that. And now we come across this wrap up related to the pop up and pop up experience. I'm intrigued again to see in your opinion, after having seen the local market and the local specifics of the Luxembourg market, do you believe that pop-up stores still haven't reached the same level of other cities such as Paris, London, who have been working a lot with pop-up stores and where brands might have adopted pop-up stores into their retail strategies or into their dailies, as we say? So, how can you compare and contrast Luxembourg with other European markets? Tough question.
Luxembourg is it's a very interesting market because uh, people active in Luxembourg are it's not a lot of them, right? So
Yeah.
I think one thing that people need to understand is that the population of Luxembourg swells up to two-thirds during the day of people coming to work in Luxembourg, and then they go back to France, Germany, or Belgium, and the population shrinks again. And then we have a lot of expats. It's a very unusual ground. And when I go to look at the pop-up stores, there's very, very few of them that are actually run by Luxembourgers, by native
Mm,
Luxembourgers. Most of
mm,
them are expats who've come to establish themselves. Some are, but most of them are actually, expats who started their businesses and who started to use those facilities. So I think a lot of the time what I observe is that they are left alone to their own devices. Like, here's the store, here's the time frame, that's it. Also because, as you said correctly, the people organizing the distribution or curation of those stores they are administrative people. They
mm.
have no clue, and it's not really in their interest, because they just get the rent and that's it. Mm, so that's one of the main things that I see. And unfortunately, Luxembourg is a little bit over-regulated, in my opinion. So if I go to big cities like Paris, Antwerp, Brussels, Lisbon, it doesn't matter, Madrid, there's so much creativity. There is doing a lot with a little. And in Luxembourg, that would not be possible because it's not up to code. So you are so restricted in many things. And I get it, safety first, but sometimes it's too much. It really stifles the creativity aspects in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
So I think that is a little bit of a shame, and it's definitely lacking in Luxembourg. The quirkiness, the coffee shops that are just super simple with a couple of wooden pallets, that just doesn't exist. It's just not the thing, and mainly because the rents are too expensive, and then the other ones, the regulations are just too high. So I think that is one of the main things that is just this artistic kind of flair. It's I think it's there, but it's not quite strong enough yet. And it's just, yeah, I miss that a lot when I go to other cities and I'm just like, oh, I want this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, get me that concept.
Yes.
I know what you mean. And anyway, the very nature of pop-up stores is that quirkiness, that agility, that concept that is out of the we don't want to use the term out of the box, but out of the context, actually.
It is, and to
That
go nuts, to
exactly.
be not as clean and it's unfortunately very often very boring. It's
Right.
like you see it's a pop-up store, but it's just shelves and
Yeah,
maybe a couple of chairs and sofas and the vase with the flower in it, and it's like you could go so crazy. You could do
right.
so much more. And yes, it's effort for a small amount of time,
Yeah.
but I know that one of the people that I interviewed, she had her pop-up store in the main street in Luxembourg City, and the feedback was resounding because people loved
Love
it.
it.
They
They just
loved it. It
they
was
are
something
thirsty
fresh,
for it.
something new. It's not a franchise. So people here crave it, I think, and it's just, yeah,
Hmm.
I'm working on it.
Very interesting. Thank you, Christine. Before wrapping up, is there anything else that you would like to add and that I didn't ask about related to, first of all, the Pop Up Summit and our discussion related to pop up stores?
I think the only thing that I also see missing, and I really want everyone to be aware of, is that because you are a short-term gig, connecting people's data is crucial and has to be one of the first steps in your strategy for the store. It's not about the inventory, or it's not about the return on investment during that time. You have to think a lot longer, and that's where the digital comes in. Like, you need to collect people's data in order to communicate them with them afterwards, and I see it overlooked so many times. Or people even have an email list and they don't do anything with it, and it's just, for me, a big no. It's so much money on the table. So that, I think, would be arguably also, if you do develop a program, mandatory for every future pop-up owner to go through in order to be educated and do the best. It has to be one of the pillars of it. So that
Yeah.
is where my heart is.
Hopefully, let's work on that together, Christine. Perfect. Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you for your time and for sharing this beautiful, these insights actually about your experience with Luxembourg. Maybe if I might conclude, I will only have to say that it's not always obvious to follow standards with pop-ups, as it's very context related. And if we highlight one major obstacle on the market, is it's related to regulations, and this is where more creativity has to come in, because retailers have to rethink the entire model to overcome those obstacles and think of something as simple as it can be, but that could create that wow effect without bothering any regulations that are there for food for thought. Thank you so much, Christine.
Yeah,
And hopefully, we get in touch when you work on beautiful projects that you would like to share with us in the future.
I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Thank you.